Right now, we have inventory on the U.S. housing market surging back to pre-pandemic levels. At the same time, we are seeing home sellers cut prices at the highest rate that we have seen in 10 years. And so in today's video, we're going to dive into the details of what's going on here and why this is happening. And for anybody who can't tell, I am back here in California, and I look forward to sharing with you some of these listings that I find here, because last year when I was here, I already noticed a lot of people who were selling some of these houses and bought during the bubble were selling for a loss. So there's a lot of crazy things happening in the housing market. It's going to be fun to look at what's going on here too. Now, Realtor.com just came out with their May housing trend report, and they said that the number of homes for sale in the U.S. has topped 1 million for the first time since winter of 2019, which is right before the pandemic. But when you look at the details, the South and the West are the only areas of the country that have returned to their pre-pandemic inventory levels, because in the Midwest and the Northeast sections of the country, a lot of those areas still have lower supply than what they had before the pandemic. Some of them much lower. You know, it's interesting though, because Realtor.com calls out new construction as one of the main drivers of why the West and why the South have surpassed their pre-pandemic levels of inventory, while the Midwest and the Northeast haven't, which that is definitely part of the story, but it is not the whole part of the story. Because in the South and in the western regions of the country, they built pretty aggressively during and after the pandemic, and they're seeing more listings and longer on market times, and even a lot of major price cuts. But in the markets that didn't build as many homes, they're not seeing as many price cuts. They're still seeing prices go up in many of these areas in the Midwest and the Northeast. But make no mistake, we no longer have a housing shortage. We have homes and inventory levels back to pre-pandemic levels of supply. It's not evenly distributed across the country, but it is there. And also, I want to point out that it's not just because these areas built more homes during the pandemic than others. It's also because a lot of people bought homes in these areas because it used to be cheap and now it's expensive. In Florida, where I live, is the perfect example of that. Florida was very affordable before the pandemic, but if you bought any time 2021 or after, you probably paid significantly more for your house than somebody who bought one in 2019 did, and are seeing much larger insurance and property tax bills than anybody who in Florida has ever even seen before. And when you combine those things with the ever-increasing costs of home maintenance, then people are selling these properties because many of them simply cannot afford to keep them anymore. You know, what used to be affordable is now unaffordable, and they have to get out of these properties. So that is the other part of the story that, of course, they don't really mention here in the Realtor.com report. But according to the Realtor.com data, in cities like Denver, Colorado, you have 100% more inventory than they had pre-pandemic. Austin, Texas has 69% more inventory than pre-pandemic. Seattle, Washington has 61% more inventory than pre-pandemic. Versus areas in like Hartford, Connecticut, for example, have 78% lower inventory than they did before the pandemic. Chicago, Illinois has 60% lower inventory levels than they had before the pandemic. And Virginia Beach, Virginia has 57% lower inventory than it did. So that's how big of a gap in inventory we're talking about here. We are talking major inventory gaps between certain metros and areas across the country. We're also seeing a 7.2% increase in new listings this year, and these new listings have not translated to a hot spring buying season like everybody said it was going to be. Everybody said that this year it's going to pick up. Well, guess what, guys? It's the middle of June. The spring buying season is essentially over. We got maybe a month left at best through the middle of July. That's when it kind of tops out. And after that, home sales already start to go down again. And the fact that we're just not seeing that happen this year is kind of an anomaly, because even during the 2008 housing crash, we saw an uptick in buyers during this time of year. So it is actually very strange to not see that happen, especially in a so-called strong economy. And let's talk about price cuts for a minute. In May of 2025, 19.1% of listings across the country featured a price cut, which is the highest share for any May since at least 2016. So going back almost 10 years, we haven't seen this many price cuts for homes that are sitting on the market, which means that more and more sellers are starting to wake up to reality and wake up to the fact that, yeah, it's not selling at this price, and if I want to get this house sold, this is what it's going to have to take in order to get it done. And this is also happening at a time when there is still inventory shortages in most of the Midwest and the Northeast. So that's why this is so significant, because when you're talking just half of the country making up for this high level of price cuts that we haven't seen in 10 years, it's kind of unprecedented. We've never really seen a situation like this happen in the US housing market before. And of course, the metros with the steepest price reductions are in the West and the South, in areas like Phoenix, Arizona, Tampa, Florida, Denver, Colorado. These cities have about 30% of listings on the market with a price cut right now. And that percentage of listings with a price cut is probably going to continue to go up as these homes sit there and rot and do not sell. But one thing I have to disagree with Realtor.com with is they're claiming that we're still short 4 million homes for sale right now on the US housing market in order to have a balanced supply. Now, I don't know. There could be some truth to that. If you were to put all 4 million of those homes in the Midwest and in the Northeast, then maybe that could be true, but that still sounds like a lot. I'd be willing to bet that if they put 4 million new houses all of a sudden at the snap of a finger in the Midwest and the Northeast, that prices would fall in these areas even harder than it's falling in the South and the Western parts of the country right now. Now, something that everybody who's interested in real estate right now should understand is there's a lot of major changes that are going to be coming to Zillow right now, especially when it comes to which type of homes are going to be displayed on Zillow moving forward. Because earlier this year, Zillow announced that homes that are publicly featured for sale, like a for sale sign in the yard or an Instagram post, must be submitted to a multiple listing service within 1 day. And this policy also reflects the National Association of Realtors' Clear Cooperation Policy, which also requires agents to submit listings to an MLS within 1 business day of publicly marketing the property. Why does that matter to you as the buyer or seller? Well, I'm going to tell you why, but basically what it comes down to is some brokerage firms are starting to try to keep listings private, so that way they can try to have an exclusive sale. They can try to get double sides of the commission. They don't have to bring in an outside agent to sell a house and try to bring in more money for the firm. But big listing giants like Zillow are pushing back against this because they're refusing to list these properties on their website. For anybody who doesn't know, the MLS is basically a private database for real estate professionals, and there are over 500 MLSs in the United States. It's not like the MLS is just one program. It is hundreds of different programs for hundreds of different realtor associations across the country. One thing that's good about the MLS is it allows both large and small brokerage firms to compete on a level playing field, because when you put your listing on the MLS, it exposes that listing to anybody out there who would potentially buy or sell that property. And those are the majority of listings you see on websites like Zillow and Redfin. But here's the thing. Listings that don't follow the rules that I talked about earlier by publishing those listings on the MLS that are publicly for sale in one way or another but are not on the MLS, if they don't do it in 1 day, Zillow says that they are not going to be publishing those listings moving forward, and they're not going to publish that listing for the life of the listing between that broker and the seller, which means that a late MLS submission can permanently block that listing from appearing on Zillow or Trulia, even if the mistake is realized later. Zillow is saying this isn't going to impact most people because most real estate agents and home sellers act in good faith when they create their home listings and do put it on the MLS right away. But this is going to be targeting bad actors and people who are trying to just hog the whole pie for themselves. Because some of these larger brokerages, and probably Compass is the biggest bad actor with this, they're a company that's been absorbing a lot of smaller brokerage companies over the past decade or so, and they're known for doing this. They will put a listing up only on their Compass website for, a week or even a month, something like that, before listing on the MLS, to give only Compass agents exclusive access to that listing and people who are looking on the Compass website to shop there. This is Zillow's way of trying to fight back against this. Zillow says that all home buyers should get access to all available homes that meet their requirements. And of course, the real reason that Zillow is concerned about this is because they want to be able to make as much money as possible selling real estate agents their own leads to them, because the more listings that are available on the website, then the more leads they can sell to real estate agents. That's their business model. That's how they make a lot of their money. So basically, Zillow has already started putting out the red alert and telling people that this is a new policy that's going to be going into effect. And each listing that doesn't follow these rules moving forward creates a non-compliant violation for that listing agent. And right now, this whole rollout is working in phases. Zillow is saying that listing blocks won't start until June 30th, which is a couple more weeks from now, and agents will be subject to a 3-strike rule. If an agent receives 3 non-compliance violations, the third listing will be blocked from Zillow and Trulia for the life of the listing. After that, every additional non-compliant listing will also be blocked, and repeat violators may be flagged and lose access to Zillow's listing platform altogether. So essentially, Zillow is going to be actively targeting bad actors in the real estate business that aren't complying and aren't doing what they want them to do. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. As a real estate agent and as somebody who started real estate and selling real estate before Zillow and Trulia were really a thing, I think Zillow was in existence when I got my license, but if it was, hardly anybody knew about it, and it was extremely janky back then. It was not a reliable source of data like it is now. And, my feelings about it back when they first came on the scene was like, hey, here's this company that's taking all of our listings. The realtor associations and MLSs are selling our data to companies like Zillow so they can display it on their websites. And what do we get in return for it as a real estate agent? We have to pay for the leads that come in on that? Who wants that? I was very against it when it came out, and I still don't love it, to be honest with you, for that reason. Like, why should any real estate agent have to pay to get a lead for their own listing? Doesn't make sense. And I think that real estate agents in general have been betrayed by their local MLSs selling their data to companies like Zillow. Because before that, real estate agents had control over all of their data. So real estate agents and real estate companies could do whatever they wanted, including only display them on their website if they wanted to, and nobody could say anything about it. After all, it's their listing and it's their data, so it's their choice. And the other thing is, people used to have to come to real estate agents to look for properties. In fact, when I started my career, it was still very common for people to walk into the office and ask what they had in the area or whatever, a certain building. It wasn't easily accessible yet, like it is now. You couldn't just pull up the website or app on your phone and at a couple clicks see everything that's available in your area. It wasn't that simple. And that can be beneficial for real estate agents, but it also can be detrimental. I can see both arguments against it, and we're not going to get into the pros and cons of both of those things. But the point I'm trying to make is that, here's Zillow basically getting upset that they're not going to have access to all of the listings and they're going to start blocking people. But in reality, Zillow has messed up a lot of things for real estate agents as well. And now they're starting to get a taste of their own medicine. But the main thing I will tell you, that if you are a seller, make sure, if you want your home as visible as possible and you do want it listed on Zillow and all those places, to make sure your real estate agent is following the protocol to make sure that that's going to happen. And if you're a buyer out there, understand that there might be other places that you can look for listings besides just Zillow and Redfin, where you might find listings that aren't going to be found publicly. That's not the radio, guys. There's like a live band playing over here somewhere. I don't know where. It's coming from right over here. Super cool. Got the garage band jamming, man. Yeah. Fun stuff. I've never seen that before on any of my walks. Here's something else for people to take a look at. According to Bank of America's 2025 Home Buyer Insights Report, 22% of Gen Z homeowners are reporting purchasing their home with a sibling in 2025. So we've heard about people teaming up and buying homes with friends and family members, and this is actually the proof of it right here. In fact, it's a pretty significant increase over the last couple years. According to a report from Fortune, this figure went from only 4% of Gen Z home buyers buying with a family member in 2023 to 12% in 2024 to now 22% in 2025. This is becoming kind of the standard way that young home buyers are getting on the property ladder, is buying with a friend or family member, in this case a sibling. Also, 30% of Gen Z buyers are reporting that they took on a second job in order to fund their down payment, compared to 28% last year and 24% in 2023. And right now it's estimated that about 15% of American home buyers in general, regardless of age, are partnering up with somebody who they're not in a romantic relationship with and buying a house. This seems to be the new way that people are getting on the property ladder. And this can definitely be an advantage, but it also can be a big disadvantage, because on the one hand, if you really get along with your brother or your sister or whoever, and you guys plan on living together and sharing the house, then it might work out really well. You guys can split all the bills. It's going to be cheap. You're building the equity together. It can be great. The same token, if you're doing it just for the money, but you're not really sure about your relationship status, if you don't have the greatest relationship with a friend or a family member that you choose to buy a house with, things can get dicey pretty quick. And I'm not going to get into all the details of this, but it should definitely be noted that if you're going to do something like this, that you really want to pay attention to, and maybe even get some legal advice on the proper way to hold title for that property, because there are different ways to hold title for any given property, and depending on the choice that you make can make a huge difference of what happens when one party decides they don't want to own that property anymore and somebody else does. The way you hold title is going to determine what your options are when you come to that crossroads. Now, right now, home buyers in general are saying that uncertainty is their number one reason for not buying a house. In fact, 60% of current homeowners and would-be buyers are saying they're unsure if it's the right time to purchase. Now, if 60% of homeowners who are currently own a home and people thinking about buying are having a gut instinct telling them that maybe now's not the greatest time to buy a house, I would be listening to that gut instinct. I'm not sure which video will be released first, but in another video that I just made here in California, I was talking about millionaire renters. I was talking about how you're seeing more and more millionaires choosing to rent rather than buy a home because of the financial advantages to doing that right now. And the uncertainty is also something that's creeping up, because in 2023, already 48% of homeowners and would-be buyers were unsure if it was a good time to buy. Last year it was 57%. This year it's 60%. So that number just continues to creep up, guys, which is interesting because in some markets prices are actually coming down and we have more inventory than we've had since before the pandemic, which we talked about earlier. So even though the conditions for becoming a buyer are actually turning more in buyers' favors, buyers are getting more skittish and bearish on the housing market. But I think just based on the data we went over at the beginning of this video, that should be a clear-cut indicator that it's probably a better time to wait in most markets right now. And I know a lot of people aren't going to do it, and I'm not telling you that you have to or that you need to, because I don't know your life circumstances. I don't know your finances. You know those things better than I do. And now could be the perfect time for you to buy. Maybe you just got a huge promotion. Or maybe you've been saving and investing for a long time and you have been financially responsible and the perfect house just came up for sale at a discount. So I don't know what your situation is. Only you do. All I can do is report on the current market conditions to help people make the best choices they can possibly make. But what I would tell any would-be buyer or seller right now is to be extra cautious. If you're thinking about selling, make sure you really understand how much you're going to get for that house and what you're going to be able to do with that money and what options that's going to be able to afford you moving forward. If you're a buyer, you should really be researching the history of that house. Look at how much somebody paid for it just 2, 3, 5, 8 years ago and see if you think it's worth the increase, because in many cases it isn't. And you need to ask yourself and make sure that you are financially ready to be a homeowner if you are a buyer. Weigh the pros and cons. Look at how much more it's going to cost you than being a current renter. Like I showed you guys at the beginning of this video, the market is twisting in your favor and it's happening pretty quickly. Housing markets move slow, but I think in this case it's starting to move relatively quick, guys. We've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years in terms of inventory, in terms of price cuts, in terms of areas where home prices are actually coming down year over year. There's a lot of progress being made. But at the same token, I can understand how somebody living in the Midwest or the Northeast can feel completely stuck right now and still feel FOMO even in 2025 and feel the pressure to still pull the trigger because there's bidding wars and because homes are selling the day they come on the market with 12 offers. So only you can decide what's the best decision for you. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here. And I'll see you in the next one.